president of the Library Board of Trustees for the Estes Valley Public Library District. Tonight is our April 1st board study session, and it will include the 2020 collections report by staff, primarily by Kathleen Case, who's with us. Also on tonight are board members Pete Johnson, Lynn Lawson, David Hemphill, Kay Weston, Vice President of the Friends and Foundation, Susan Miller, and the Library Director, Claudine Perot. I think I got everyone. And so I will turn it first over to Claudine for any introductions she'd like to make.
Thank you, John. We do have a few new folks. So for those of you who have heard this before, thank you for your patience on a slight review as to why we're meeting. Some years ago, and Kathleen will remember the exact year, there were a lot of questions about how we were spending our money on acquisitions, where that money was being spent, and as best as we could determine what was the return on investment on those expenditures based on use per collection area. So it did answer a lot of questions at the time when we first started. Was that 4 years ago, 3 years ago, Kathleen?
It was in 2014 was the first year.
7
years ago.
7 years ago.
Poor. Joanna, strike that from the recording, please. But what I'd like to, let me also say about Kathleen. Kathleen Case has been at the library. How many years have you been at the library? I won't even guess at this point.
21.
So Kathleen's been here 21
20.
years.
Yeah.
She's been doing acquisitions a very long time and has adapted readily to a lot of changes, whether it was physical or digital. So I hope tonight you can see in the attachment you received that the topics for review were an effort to refresh and make sure, number one, that this study session is of value to the board. We will always show you our expenditures. We will always show you our use reports, right? That's going to come every year, no matter what. So I'm going to take this time to say, Kathleen is the expert. As soon as I'm done, I will have very little to contribute. I probably will have as many questions as you do. But I would like to say, Kathleen, I think in this current climate, you're going to talk about the extraordinary year of 2020 and the unusual impact on our use figures. But it seems to me that what's emerging now in 2021 is not how much we're spending on collections and what we're doing with our collections policy, but kind of the culture wars and its effect on public library acquisitions. And I just want to say tonight, as we talk about the return on investment on expenditure per capita, expenditure per area, I would also like to remind the board what appears to be of interest to the world right now is not what it cost per circulated book, because by the way, that's a data point we have, is called a turnover rate, and Kathleen and I can talk more about that, all the nerdy stuff. It seems to me that in the coming year, I'm going to be turning to the board a little more often about things like Dr. Seuss and Dan Pilkey's Captain Underpants and other contentious titles that were once normal and perhaps now are in question. So Kathleen, I hope you don't mind that I completely did a subject framing grab on this. And but then I turn it over to you and your fantastic data-driven work. Is there anything else you would like me to add or subtract from what I just did?
No, we're just going to move forward.
Kathleen, thank you for bringing your expertise.
Yeah, the main message is we will continue to have challenges from our patrons and from the general public, but that's the way it should be, perhaps. Mm-hmm. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Claudine, and thank you, board, for allowing me to present tonight. It's always good for me to review the past year and what was good about it and what was bad and what we can do better, and where we can spend our money better, and what we should maybe add to the collection, what we should consider taking out of the collection, all of that. Because I get so caught up in the day-to-day tasks And it's good for me to sit back and really think and be more thoughtful about what we're all doing here. So as I go along, if you have any questions, let me know. We started this report in 2014, and it's a lot of numbers, and it's combined in many different ways. So I'm thinking about the report for next year for two reasons. One, I think it's a little bit confusing the way we present it now. I think there are better ways that we can do it. And the second reason is our reporting system has changed a little bit with our new ILS. So it might be that I don't have the exact same information, or maybe I have to gather it differently. I'll be investigating that over the course of the next months before I can prepare our next report. There were a few questions that Lynn had, and I will get to those in just a minute. I wanted to say that I'm the acquisitions librarian, but I do have help. Jamie Murphy is responsible for the collection development in periodicals and in large print. And also she takes care of the databases amongst a million other things. Chase and Melanie take care of the collection development in the youth services department. So they give me the materials, the information that I need to order materials for the youth department, but they're responsible for selecting the materials. I just order them and receive them and pay, invoice, all that stuff. And then we have Gretel, who is responsible for ELL and outreach. And she is responsible for the Spanish language collection and English language learners. So I'm thankful that we have a team of people to work on all of the various collections in the library. The materials that we do receive arrive shelf ready. So it takes it saves us a lot of time because the materials arrive and they're already covered, and they have the barcodes and the spine labels and the MARC records that we import, and that's how our patrons find them in the catalog. So we do pay a little bit extra for that service, but it saves us a lot of time and it allows us to do other things. One part of the job, other than acquisitions, is also de-accessioning, which is where we go through the collection and pull materials that do not circulate. There have been studies that show that the shelves could be totally full and packed from end to end, but people don't quite find things when the materials are so packed in. So we have our shelves are 3/4 full, and then we have our book face out on the end, and that helps people with their discovery, with the discovery level of the library. They can find things more easily. So once a year, everyone who is involved in acquisitions and collection development, we all weed our collections. So we run reports and we pull those things that are no longer popular and are not circulating, so that we can put things on the shelves that might circulate and are more popular. That doesn't mean that we pull everything that's on the list, because it might be that our local history collection is more popular in the summer, so it might not all check out every summer. So we can't get, we always want to have the books on the various ranches and the biographies and the people and the land. So it's not black and white. It's not cut and dry. We do it manually. So it does take a little bit of time to do it, but we do look at the list and we pull the materials and we make decisions on, well, this is the middle of the Janet Ivanovich series. We can't pull book 18 when she's still writing her series, So we do look at those lists and we decide what we should keep and what should go. Some highlights from 2020. 2020 was difficult, to say the least. There were a couple of things that I actually kind of forgot about until I sat down and started thinking about what we did last year. And one of the things that I hadn't anticipated was that the publishing industry, like all of the big books, a lot of the famous like blockbuster authors publish in the spring and in the fall. Well, in May, all of the author tours were canceled, So they pushed all of those publishing dates back to the fall. So when I think I'm going to be spending all this money on bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers, and then they're not being published until later in the year, we kind of had to get a little bit creative about what we're going to be spending our money on, how we're going to spend it. And that's when, of course, at the same time, digital collections were becoming much more popular because no one could come in the building in the first place. So we did see a rise in the digital collection. We increased the number of patrons using the digital collection by 20% from the previous year. And we increased the circulations by 26% from 2019. So we did put a little bit, we put not a lot more, but we did put, I think it was $12,000 more towards the digital collections to keep up with that while the library was closed. And, like throughout the summer when people were still not really coming in and staying at home a little bit more, we're going to see if we can keep those numbers up through marketing and just getting the word out. We'll see how that goes this year. I don't know if everyone has had a chance to look at the sheets. Joanna, did you want to put the first sheet up? The one that's layer 1. I don't necessarily have anything specific to say about the different budget sheets, but if anybody has any questions, please let me know. So the sheet number 1 is like the most general sheet. It's where everything is combined into one sheet between the adult. That's all the physical collection. So that includes, the adult collection includes all of the physical materials that can be checked out of the library, including magazines. And it also includes the large print and the Spanish and ELL collection, and then the regular general adult collection. So you'll see we actually the weeding schedule for the adult collection, we typically weed in January because it's a quieter time and we can get into the stacks more easily throughout the day when there are fewer people in the building. So I have Carolyn Harris is my volunteer, and she's been helping me since 2008 probably, right after she retired. So she's been coming in and helping with the weeding process. And we weed in January for a couple of weeks. So you'll see that our numbers are a little bit more, we've added, it says in 2020, we added 4,306 items and we deleted 3,895. And that's because we weeded in January of 2020. And then I had some time to add more materials throughout the year. Whereas the youth collection, you'll see that they had deleted more than they added. And that is because they delete materials in the fall and in the before the end of the year. So they deleted more at the end of the year than, of course, they added throughout the year for a couple of different reasons. Periodicals stays pretty static because we have like a pretty set collection of magazines that we subscribe to. The periodicals are they're going in and out of print. So Jamie was telling me just recently last week that Oprah magazine is going to just digital. So it seems like that's where a lot of magazines are going. But then every year we'll find a few new magazines that are in print. So I don't fully understand how the magazine industry works, but I just wonder how much longer we'll have any of those. And then the digital collections, you'll see that in 2018, we added 34,885 items. And in 2020, we added almost 200,000. That is because the two of our vendors, we're part of a consortium in one of them, and the other is Hoopla, and it's a pay per use. We just pay For the Overdrive collection, where we're part of a consortium, we pay a set amount each year. And because we're part of a consortium, there are 30, when we first joined, there were 18 libraries. And now I think there are 35 libraries. And they're all smaller libraries, like out on the plains and on the western slopes. So there's smaller libraries like us that there aren't any really big. It's not like Jeffco and Denver Public Library. They're not involved in the consortium we're a part of. So we have access to so many different titles, books on ebooks and books on audio, and I think it's a good choice for our patrons because it gives them so many different options. So that is why we aren't actually buying, like we don't pay per copy for the Overdrive or the Hoopla collection. And that is why that collection is just exploding. Like there are just more people joining every year and they can put more money that they're paying their set amount and they can put more money into the budget to spend. Are there any questions yet?
Good. I was hoping you would stop there.
I know. I was like,
and
I've just been rattling all this stuff.
No, you covered some very important information, and so we do want to open it up, board, if you and Susan, you have any questions? Lynn looks like she has a question right off.
Kathleen, do the different collections that we're part of, do they overlap? Do they have access to completely different material?
There's definitely some overlap between the cloud library, which is we've been a customer of the cloud library through Biblioteca since 2012, and we've started that collection from nothing to what we have today, which is I think it was like 5,500 items. I have it written down here. So there's definitely some overlap, probably between all three, but definitely between the Overdrive collection and the cloud library. And the Overdrive collection is the consortium. So that might be, you might be looking for the new CJ Box book, and you can find it in both places as an ebook. And in Overdrive, you could find it as an audiobook. And you could say, like, maybe we should save our money and just put it towards, just leave it with Overdrive. But the cloud library is a bit easier to use for a lot of people. It's just more user friendly, I think. And the people who are used to it, they might only use that one collection. Some of our patrons use all three collections, and they probably work it where they're going to get on hold in both places for the new CJ Box. And they'll check it out at the first place it becomes available, because the hold list, they might not want to wait for their hold to pop up. So yes, there is overlap.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, unmute.
Thank you. Do you know what books are going to be added to those consortiums and the Overdrive as you make decisions on actual book acquisitions for our library?
I don't know in advance what is going to be purchased at Overdrive I mean, in the consortium. Yeah. But that is something that I can certainly look into. I think, though, that there are certain titles that I would probably order for our cloud library, even if they were available in Overdrive, just for the ease of the use of it. I do think that eventually we'll need to reconsider all of the three collections that we do have and see what is most popular. And we'll just need to investigate that a little bit further. But yeah.
Another kind of another question is, I know sometimes you can get an ebook and then you can also get the hardcover. Have you ever kind of monitored to see how do our patrons use it? Do they prefer ebook? Do they prefer hardcover? And how do we use our books?
My experience is that people who prefer paper, prefer the print version in paper, they They will sometimes use the digital version, but it's kind of like only if they absolutely have to.
Okay.
Or people, they might prefer to read print when they're here in town, but then they're going to go on vacation and then they're going to load up their devices because it's so much easier to just carry a little, little e-reader. And I do think there are some patrons who only use digital. They never come into the library. And it's not that they don't, everyone needs to have a card here to access our collections. I think that they just truly love the ease of the digital copies. And when we were in lockdown last year, people in Estes Park love their dogs and love to walk their dogs. So I would see library patrons in my neighborhood and when I'm out walking, and they'd be like, when is the library going to open? Because it's so hard for me to browse online. Like I'd rather just come in and browse through the stacks. And I'm like, we can have a socially distanced book a librarian like across the street and I can show you how to use your iPad and download the books. And they're like, no, I'll just read my old John Grisham that I have in the house. Like they just, I think it's they're print people. There's sometimes the vacationers who like the digital, and then there are the digital people.
Okay.
But maybe you all have a different experience. John?
Yes. David or Pete, either of you have any questions or comments at this stage?
Lynn?
No, Lynn has
Yeah,
another.
I do have another question,
Yeah.
and it may be too big a question.
Okay.
Because Claudine and I talked about this some, but when you think about, I mean, we've got different financial implications of buying a physical book and putting it on the shelf versus having access to digital that maybe we pay just to be part of, or maybe we pay for each checkout. Can you talk about that a little bit, or is that something you can only talk about a lot because it's huge?
Well, so with the digital, I know one of your questions in your email had to do with the digital collection, and it's so hard because they're all different. Like, for example, with the cloud library, which we've belonged to since 2012, each publisher has different licensing restrictions. So like Random House, for an ebook that can only check out to one person at a time, Random House titles are typically on average $60 for the digital file. So, and that it doesn't expire. It doesn't matter how many times it's checked out, it's there and our patrons can access it. It's not going to go away. HarperCollins publisher, their books are less expensive, but they will expire after 52 checkouts or 26 checkouts. It kind of depends on the title. So like when I'm looking at what I'm going to add to the collection, I see what the publisher is, what the restrictions are, and then how much it's going to cost. So then the other thing is you can also get them. So there's the restriction on the cost, Random House. HarperCollins is the 52 or the 26 checkouts. And then there's some that are cheaper that, they expire after 1 year. So, and it doesn't matter if they've checked out, if they're super popular or not, they just like go away. So I don't know. I think I need to ask for help because I don't really know what the answer is as far as what's best, print versus digital. And I'm not sure. Did I come close to answering your question?
No, that's really helpful. The part of the answer is it's complicated and it's in that kind of stage of evolution where it hasn't all standardized.
Right.
But what that does say, but that's most of those numbers you talked about, that's more expensive than buying a book and putting it on a shelf.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Which just feels backwards, but.
And people, it doesn't make sense. Like it's a digital file somewhere on a server. Why can't 5 people access it at one time? But nope, that's not how it works. It's one person at a time. So when there are 5 people waiting for the new CJ box book, I will add another copy because we don't want our patrons to wait. So we have the 5 hold limit on both print and digital. So I'll add another copy so that the hold list moves more quickly. And it's more expensive when it's a digital copy.
Right. Thank you. That is really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Okay, so I've got a
May I
few
ask
Claudine
comments.
has a question.
I'm sorry? Claudine, go ahead.
Kathleen, I think somewhere in your files a few years ago, you and Mark created something that showed, if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium, right? If it's HarperCollum, we get this many checkouts. It costs this much. And I think if you can brush that off, this at some point this season and share it, I think it would be very illuminating, at least to Lynn and probably everyone, because Lynn, I think the question you're asking to me is a melancholy one, which is 10 years ago, when it was largely print, the culture from publishing houses was libraries pay the same for the book as a bookseller, like McDonald's bookshop. So the taxpayers were able to pay about 40 cents on the dollar for the retail price. And now as we move towards digital, and I'm going to just keep doing pop culture book references here, or movies, Inherit the Wind, right? We gain this fantastic, I said to Kathleen recently, hey, I'd like this really random academic book. She was able to deliver it for me that day, right? In digital format. Like, that is marvelous, right? I didn't ask her what we paid for it, but it's a lease, right? The citizens don't own it with that tax investment, right? And on average, we're finding that if you calculate it, it is double, and depending on the publisher, triple the retail cost. So that inversion is real, and that's the trajectory. So I really wanted to emphasize your concerns, Lynn, that they are broadly shared, and at the national level, there have been conversations between publishers and Office of Intellectual Freedom and equity officers saying, please help us. At this point, the power is with the publisher, and they are not, that culture of giving libraries the same price as booksellers is over with digital. So Kathleen, you're so factual. I love it. And I'm so emotive in my response to digital. So we'll just keep each other balanced. Okay. Thanks. Lynn, thank you. John, thank you for giving me the floor.
No problem. So my comments, I appreciate very much you starting off with some of the difficulties from last year caused by the publishers and the postponements and so forth. At the same time, I think I am always very disappointed if we do not spend our budget on books.
I know.
We were way under on print books.
Way under.
In all categories. So I hope that this year we can do a little bit better.
We are on our way to doing a lot better. Trust me.
Well, and just as an aside, my wife Marlene said she tried to help you buy more books. Okay.
Thank you.
I understand the circumstances, and it was a strange year, but we need to get back on track. For the rest of the board, I don't think any of this board was around at the time that the commitment was made by the board in 2003 and 2013-14 to increase the budget on materials, books, by 2% every year. And so, we've had discussions every year probably around that to some extent. But the goal still is, if that needs to change from a category basis to the total, we need to have more discussion around that and how we'll manage that. And I understand, that the digital books are costing more, and we certainly spent that budget plus a little bit, which is fine, especially last year, as you say, more people. And I'm very happy to hear that we had such an increase in digital users,
Right.
because the first 4 or 5 years that we had Overdrive, that was very slow to actually have that kind of increase in digital users. And maybe this board primarily more interested in digital, I don't know, but all the same, we still have a lot of people who want the hard
The print.
hard book in their hand to read. And I tend to be probably a little bit more that way as far as what I read than the digital, although I do both. So on this page, this layer, appreciate it very much. What you shared and how you've presented it. If there's no other questions, anyone? Susan? Nothing? Okay. Let's move along then.
Okay.
Did you want to go to layer 2?
We can go to layer 2. I would like to go back to your comment about the digital collections, the budget spent last year on the digital collections. When we went home in March, we had books that were en route from Baker and Taylor in boxes. And our local UPS guy, who is just awesome, he called, Katha, who is one of our patron services team members, he was making a delivery to her house. And he's like, I need to get in touch with the library. The library is closing and I have all these books to deliver. She gave him Claudine's email and phone number, maybe, or I can't remember how it worked out, but I ended up calling him on his cell phone. And he said, I'm going to reroute all the materials to your house, if that's okay. Like, I know it's COVID and it might be kind of iffy, who knows at this point. So he rerouted, they met, the UPS truck drivers met, and they loaded our library materials into the truck that comes to my neighborhood, and they were being delivered to my house. So, and at that point, we contacted all of our vendors and told them we need to stop all shipments. And this was happening all over the country, because I was like, I don't know if are they going to really be able to do this? And they were like, everyone is stopping shipments. So it was at that point that I was like, what is going on in the world? This is crazy. So nothing was arriving. Mark Riffle at the time said, I'm not sure what the budget, what it's going to look like. Please don't spend any money except for digital collections. Keep spending money. And so it's like a weekly thing, because books are published weekly. So it's a weekly cycle where I order print materials, DVDs, books on CD, and digital materials. So that's what I was spending a lot of my time doing from home. And people were then calling. I can't remember exactly what the timeline was. Claudine might remember, when Allison hooked up our phones so that we could answer the phones at home and chat. We're chatting with patrons. And I'd get people calling and saying, I don't have a digital account. How do I do that? So we're helping people over the phone set up accounts to get the digital materials. And it was super exciting, because it was something that people were really thankful for, that they could do this. And they couldn't believe that they could make requests. And they also couldn't believe that the library pays for that. Like, they think it's free, which I mean, how would they know? So it was just interesting to talk to people and to hear how thankful they were, and how thankful the parents were, that even though their kids, they didn't necessarily appreciate all the screen time, they could get the books that they wanted to read out of any one of our vendors. They could get music from Hoopla, they could get audiobooks and books. So that is why last year we spent $12,000 more in digital, because we weren't spending money anywhere else, because there wasn't anything to spend the money on at the time.
Sure.
So I really thought it was going to be more by the end of the year, but it ended up not being that crazy.
Kathleen, thank you. That
Well
was like
done.
the best story review of that moment. I loved it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Okay,
So,
let's move
sorry.
to layer 2.
Layer 2. Okay. So layer 2 is broken down because this is where we get a little bit down into the more nitty gritty, and really just that top portion is 2020, but I left 2019 and 2018 so we could compare if you're interested in that. And it just, oh yeah, it's just kind of sad to see how little was actually spent. Because I always take such pride in being able to spend all of it. But I've chatted with Melanie and with Chase about how we can be better. We're going to meet quarterly, and I'm going to hound them to make sure that they're ordering their materials in the youth section for the youth department. In 2019, Chase had just been hired, and he was just kind of learning the ropes of ordering for the teen department. And then COVID hit, and you'll see that there weren't on the, when we get to the teen and the youth services page, you'll see that there wasn't a lot spent in anything other than the ebooks and the books, which was good. We have standing order plans set up for the books, so that was good. And Melanie was really disappointed that she also didn't get to spend her full budget, but with the year we had, I mean, yeah, she's okay with it, but she knows that we're gonna try to spend our full budgets this year for sure. So you'll see music CDs. Music CDs, I used to order, and I've stopped ordering them because I was waiting to see if I would get any requests now that things are going so digital. And I haven't had requests for, last year I think I had a request for one music CD. So I had added that, and then in 2020, in 2019, I think I ordered one music CD, and last year I didn't order any. You know, the CDs are just, they scratch so easily, and they're quite a lot to maintain as far as cleaning them. So we're just going to see how that circulates. It doesn't circulate. It's not a super high circulating collection at this point. Some might say it's because there's nothing new in there to circulate, but a lot of our summer patrons always get so excited by the older stuff that we have. So that does circulate a little bit. DVDs, you can see that we only spent half of that. And that was the same situation with the book publishing. There weren't any new movies really being released. A lot of horror, like B-level horror films. And our patrons might be a little bit interested in horror, but it's not the most popular genre. So I tried to order a lot of older movies that we could, that people might be interested in, and look into new series. So that's something that will, now that movies are being released again, that's really exciting to see. Something new that we might try in 2021, if I can get it set up. Gosh, it's almost April now. Oh, it is April. So, and there are new things called Binge Boxes. And we all know what it is to binge on a television series. But these Binge Boxes are like 4 or 5 movies that have a specific theme, or maybe it's the same movie stars in all of the movies, and you check them all out at once. And our vendor, Midwest Tape, they have a whole bunch of these to choose from. So like, for example, Tom Hanks. So you're going to get 5 Tom Hanks movies in one binge box, and you check them all out at once in like a nice slim case. And they have been popular, and it's been on my list of things to look into. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Books on CD are still popular, and that includes playaways, which are the MP3s. The books on MP3, those are still popular. Ebooks, of course, are popular. And the audiobooks, the books that you can listen to, the downloadable audiobooks, are very popular in the Hoopla collection, especially. And then the print
So, excuse me. So
yes.
Under digital audiobooks, is
Yeah.
that what you're talking about?
No, the digital, I couldn't separate out just the digital audiobooks I should have deleted that line. It's just that it's been there and I didn't take care of it.
Okay, I was noticing that it can be dropped. Also, you have it lumped in on the youth side with ebooks.
Right. And that was, I'm sorry, John, that I can't remember why when Kay and I set these
That's okay.
sheets up, why we did it that way with
Yeah.
the ebooks and the audiobooks, because the audiobooks on the youth and the teen sheet, those are the physical books on CD and the ebooks together. And I can't remember why we did it that way.
Well, you
So
can
that's-
just drop that digital audiobook
Yeah.
category.
So I was thinking for next year, I would basically do this report, but clean it up and make it a little bit more streamlined, this layer 2.
Mhm.
Because basically what you are interested in is how much money are we budgeted, how much of our budget is actually spent, and how many items are added and deleted in each collection. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
The others can speak for themselves. And under the deleted category, I guess I'm a little disappointed since we didn't add as many on the hard copies,
Right.
that we still deleted as many as we had been before.
Right. Well, last year we didn't know that COVID was going to hit. So we deleted.
Oh, this is
many of-
January last
Yeah.
year. Okay,
So
gotcha.
we would have deleted those items, the 2,306 items
Right.
in January of 2020, and then
Okay.
COVID hit, and then we only got to add, we should have added probably, 4,000 type.
Well,
new
yeah,
print materials.
but we went through that. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
Quick
So,
question.
Claudine. Oh,
So in January this year, did you not delete quite so many?
January of this year, we did definitely weed. And I'm sorry, John, I can't give you the exact number, but as soon as I know what that number is, I will give it to you.
That's all right.
Amy and I met today. We have a weekly meeting where we discuss our new ILS and ways in which we can make it work better for us. And we're always discussing reports. And today we were working on what would be the discard report so that I could tell you what the number was that we deleted in January. And we couldn't figure it out quite in the amount of time that we had. So we are postponing and we're putting a ticket in with the ILS and we're going to have them figure it out for us.
I'm just poking you a little bit, Kathleen.
I know,
I'm sorry.
I'm just letting you know that we are working on it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Anybody else have any questions on this layer? Yeah, okay.
Is there any way you could also add the column of what's checked out?
Oh,
in each of those
circulation.
Yeah,
Yes.
in each of those categories?
Yes.
Because I hear what John's saying is we want to spend our budget, but do we want to spend our budget if no one's checking out?
Right.
For instance, ebooks or audiobooks, whatever.
Right. That would be a good guide for. I think I know what people are really interested in. I do look to see what circulates, but it would be really good to have it on the same sheet with the amount of money that we spend. And yes, I'm adding that to my list.
Good one. Lynn?
Yeah, the other question or thing to think about as we present it going forward is the Spanish language materials.
Yes.
And, how much of this budget goes to refreshing that collection? And, how does that circulate?
I have some notes here. I talked with Gretel and with Melanie, actually, so that I would know, I would be more informed. Melanie wanted me to share with you with the board that she is constantly adding new Spanish language materials to the youth collection in both the board books, the little itty bitty baby board books, that are cardboard, and the J, like First Reader 1, First Reader 2, J First Chapter. And she does a really good job of adding those new materials, like pretty much with every big order that she has. She said she's not sure necessarily that the people who check those books out are Spanish speakers. She thinks that they are English-speaking parents who want their babies to be familiar with Spanish words and to get started with Spanish. We do have some Spanish families that come in, but she can't say for sure that they are the people who are checking out the Spanish books. They're probably checking out the books in English. Gretel is the person who, I wish Bill was here because he would probably have a lot more to add to this because he's worked with Gretel as an ELL tutor. Gretel works with outreach and ELL, and she works with the tutors and the tutees. And I asked her what she could tell me about the Spanish language collection because it just doesn't circulate. So we have fiction, nonfiction, and we also have some Spanish DVDs in that collection. And she said part of her orientation with the tutors and the tutees is that they go through their process, and then she gives them a tour of the library, and she specifically shows them the Spanish collections that we have to offer. So the tutors know about them. The English language learners know about the collection. And Gretel said, I think that the Spanish collection is actually checked out mostly by the tutors, not the people who speak Spanish and are learning English. And I said, well, you have a connection. You've been working with Olga at Mountain Home Cafe and with the outreach. She goes to different events around town at the high school. And maybe Claudine knows more of the events that she goes to. But she takes the library material. She takes information about the library and the tutoring and English language learning and all of that to those programs. And she said that she also takes free books to give away. And she said it is like pulling teeth to get people to take the books from her. So she wanted me to share that she thinks that it could partially be that it's just like, it's something that is our culture, or but not everyone. I know people who don't read for pleasure. She said she just doesn't know that is something that that Spanish speaking people do for pleasure, that they read. So I don't know if, I wish Bill was here so he could add to that if he knows any more, or anyone on the board might know more about that. But Gretel said that she will work with me this year to add some new fiction and some new nonfiction. We just aren't really sure what will bring people in to check those things out.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thanks.
One of those
an
difficult
interesting
ones.
perspective. Well, what
Yeah.
what comes first?
Right. Yeah.
And Kathleen, I think for perspective, so that it's not all about Spanish speakers,
Yes.
would you agree that our teen collection is probably largely checked out by adults?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So guys, I just want to remind you, we do our best to target populations, but of course we really don't know who did the checking out. So I don't mean to distract us from the question about ELL value. I just want to put it in perspective. I also want to say, we may have touched on this at the board level, but a gentle reminder that certainly in Mexico and in numerous Central and South American countries, public libraries are government repositories. They're not public libraries as we experience in the United States. So please understand, this is for someone new to the United States, the idea of the public libraries is a concept that I really think I think we're looking at a bit of a tension here between personal agency, right, and the system that's offered. And we can really focus on the system part. Are we communicating well? That, the American library system is very different than where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say the agency part, I'm not going to talk about that today, but what we're hoping to work on in the next year is how do we revise our system to be more valuable? Thanks.
Great.
Thanks.
Okay. Do you really want to go into layer 3, or do you want to leave it for everyone to just look at on their own?
If people want to look at it on their own and ask questions, it's just more of the same.
Right.
It's just getting a little bit deeper, and it might be, confusing.
Not confusing. It is detail. And if anyone has questions on it, be happy to hear them.
Let's see. I was going to look at my list here really quick to see if there's anything else that that we didn't, let's see, Cloud Library. Oh, in relation to the digital collections and the 3 vendors that we use, I just wanted to point out that the Cloud Library is ebooks. We could purchase audiobooks for that collection, but we'd be starting from the ground up and we would have to build the collection on our own. And since Overdrive offers ebooks, audiobooks, and they offer a variety of different types of files. So the Cloud Library works only with tablets, and Overdrive works with Kindle, works with simple e-readers and tablets. So that works well for ebooks. The audiobooks, you know, people can download, and there's a huge variety of them. Hoopla offers ebooks, audiobooks, movies, television, comic books, and music. So it offers more of a selection of different items, different types of material, and that is pay per use. So we don't pay them all one big, large sum. We pay monthly according to whatever our patrons are checking out. So that I wanted to point out the difference between the 3 different collections that we offer, and that we do pay attention to holds in each one in Overdrive and in the Cloud Library. Let's see, well, I already mentioned the increase in the collection, and let's see, I think we've pretty much covered everything. I did not add that when we weed books from the collection, if they're really damaged, and I meant to bring a stack of damaged books so I could show you, the books that people return that their new puppy ate, you know, and like the whole inside of the book is ripped out. So I can bring those next year. But the books that are still in good shape, we withdraw them and then we box them up. And Sarah Walsh at Cliffhanger, she scans them. She has a volunteer who scans them, and they're either sold at Better World Books, which is an online bookseller. I don't know that she takes very many of them over to the shop. She might take some of them. I haven't checked in with her recently to see about that, but just so you know where they go, they are not going into the dumpster for sure. The books that are too damaged, that can't be read or used for anything else, I take those to EcoCycle in Boulder. So they're recycled.
Are there very many of that kind that are really so damaged?
This year, I would say we probably had like 3 or 4, because when you're actually, we mark them all, we black out the barcode and the spine label and stamp them withdrawn. So when you're opening the book, you know, you really get to see what the condition is. So we look at every single one of them. And I actually think our collection is pretty clean and pretty nice. But when we weed, we definitely find at least a few boxes. There were boxes left over from last year because EcoCycle, you know, with COVID was, you know, limited in what they were accepting. So this year I took 12 boxes to be recycled. And I would say that, yeah, there were probably 7 that were left over from last year. So we probably had about 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent report.
Pete has his hand up.
Huh? Pete.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Kathleen, I don't know, I just don't know enough about it, but is there a library at the school?
Yes.
So the high school has one, does it elementary school have one?
Mm-hmm.
And
the middle school.
And the middle school. So what do we do? Do we do anything in terms of interaction with that and stuff coming from our library to theirs, that kind of thing, instead of recycling and that kind of thing?
That is an excellent question, because this is the first year that we had some duplicates come in an order that just kind of overlapped that we didn't quite catch. So we had 3 books come in just last week, and I was like, oh, well, I could take the cover off and take the stickers off and we'll give them to Cliffhanger. And Melanie said, let's give them to the school, because the school might not have these and they're brand new. You know, I can't remember what the title of the first one was, but anyway, so we are in contact Jamie is in the most contact with the school librarian, and the school librarian comes over here once a day, I would say, probably 3 out of the 5 days of the week, to deliver materials that our patrons in the Estes Valley have put materials that are at the schools on hold. So it's kind of like our own little interlibrary courier. Deb Holmes brings books over from the school district, and we circulate them to our patrons here. I don't know that it's been I don't know how many of our books go over to the school. I think people probably just come here and get them if they want them. But yeah, we're lucky to have.
Pete, yeah, Pete, of course, last year we just got linked in with our ILS system with the school as well as Eagle Rock School, although we had been doing interlibrary with Eagle Rock for the last few years. But now we're all on the same system. And so I think that should make it a little easier, Kathleen, to identify those kinds of things that could go.
Yeah, it will.
If I may, please know that the school district, not Eagle Rock, the district public school, only turned on the ILS, the integrated library system, in January. So
okay.
we may have done all that pre-work. They were able to start. So it's really just been 3 months.
Yeah.
So Pete, it's a very timely question because those relationships were informal and they're now for the first time formalized.
Yes.
So it's a great question.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions, comments at this point? Yes, Claudine, unmute.
I just wanted to thank Lynn and whomever else may have contributed to the topics because Kathleen, now that I know how many years we've really been doing this, I have to say this was the most robust for me. Like it was, Kathleen, thank you. It's such a helpful reminder as to what it is you do day by day. I interrupt you with things that serve me. Rarely do I hear the reverse, and I'm just so deeply grateful. I did want John, but not to stop the conversation, but to review the tasks that I think I heard today, because as you guys know, my job is to make sure you don't give Kathleen assignments. You give me assignments, and then I pretend to negotiate them with Kathleen, but she really just does them, right? Number one, what I heard was very great enthusiasm to get our spending back on track post-pandemic. Number two, that Kathleen and I will look for that document we created some years ago. I think Mark was the main author. Kind of a breakdown of which vendor provided what kind that expired when, at what cost. I just think it's almost humorous, except that it's the new reality and it's the contracts that Kathleen manages. So I'd love to share it.
And well, it's changed over the years, I think, too.
Right? Yeah.
We'll have to update it.
Not only have we added the new vendors, but those vendors have changed their criteria on all that kind of thing.
And of course, it's multi-layered, John. The vendors may have changed it, as have the publishers.
Yes.
So the third was the recommendation to add for next year a column that shows circulation. And I think that's overdue and a great suggestion from Kay.
Yeah.
What I'm supposed to do is say, do you all agree with that? Did we miss something? Is there something else you'd like as a board, as opposed to individuals, to give us direction on?
Anyone? Any suggestions? I think that captures what I heard very well. And
that's what I have too.
Yeah.
Kathleen, you make acquisitions fun. That was great.
Thanks.
My personal compliments, Kathleen, on the excellent job, not only on the report, but on your day-to-day, week-to-week efforts in making sure that the library is well stocked with the kind of materials that our patrons want and will use.
Thank you. This week, we added over 200 new items to the new adult collection downstairs. So you might want to come in and check some out for the weekend.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. With that, then, if no one has anything, I'll give one last chance. If anyone has thought of anything. We're right at 1 hour. That's an excellent study session in many ways. Thank you all for your participation. Stay healthy. Our board meeting will be the 19th,
19th.
and the collections policy should be on the agenda.
Right.
So
I'm adding that to my list.
I'll be in touch.
Go ahead, Pete.
I just saying I'll be in touch, Kathleen.
Okay.
No,
Oh,
I'll be in touch.
Oh, right.
Kathleen.
Yes. Claudine will be in touch.
Pete,
Our
you'll be in
mediator.
touch. You'll be in touch, Pete, with Claudine,
Correct.
and hopefully Bill and Beth on that committee. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.